It all began on a Saturday morning that seemed ordinary at first. Emily had been invited to Daniel's family estate, a sprawling mansion that sat on a hilltop overlooking perfectly trimmed gardens and marble fountains. Despite the breathtaking scenery, Emily felt out of place the moment she stepped through the heavy oak doors. She wasn't used to such wealth, and even though Daniel had recently revealed to her that he was a millionaire, she still struggled to reconcile the warm, funny man she knew with the world of glittering chandeliers and grand hallways. Daniel had suggested something simple. Instead of going to a salon, Emily could trim his hair herself. She was skilled enough. She had been working part-time at a local hair studio for years. It wasn't anything glamorous, but it paid her bills. Besides, she liked the intimacy of helping him look his best. Emily arrived with her small stylist kit neatly tucked under her arm, her nerves jangling as she followed Daniel into the sunroom where light poured through tall windows. Waiting there was his mother, Mrs. Beaumont. Emily had seen her once before at a distance but never this close. The woman was tall, elegant, with perfectly styled silver hair and a long pearl necklace that shimmered when she moved. She radiated authority, the kind that made Emily immediately stand straighter and question whether her shoes were too cheap, her blouse too plain. Mrs. Beaumont's eyes scanned Emily from head to toe, sharp as knives, and though she smiled politely, it didn't reach her eyes. Emily tried to shake off the discomfort, telling herself she was only there for Daniel. He sat in a high-backed chair, relaxed, grinning at her the way he always did, as though she was the only person who mattered in the world. That gave her courage. She unpacked her kit, laying out her combs and scissors carefully on a side table, trying to ignore the subtle tapping of Mrs. Beaumont's heels as she paced behind them. "Emily cuts hair beautifully, Mother," Daniel said lightly, noticing the tension. "You'll see. No need to worry." But Mrs. Beaumont's reply was a soft murmur, almost a hiss. "Girls like you don't belong in this house." Emily's hands faltered for a split second, but she forced herself to continue. She wasn't going to give this woman the satisfaction of seeing her rattled. She combed Daniel's thick dark hair, lifting the strands and snipping carefully. The sound of the scissors echoed in the stillness of the room, strangely loud against the silence. Suddenly, without warning, Mrs. Beaumont swooped down and grabbed Emily's wrist. The scissors froze midair, a lock of Daniel's hair caught between the blades. Emily's heart leapt, startled, as she looked into the older woman's face. To her surprise, Mrs. Beaumont wasn't angry, she was terrified. Her lips trembled, her eyes wide with something that looked almost like grief. "Stop it," she whispered at first, then louder, desperate. "Stop it right now, you mustn't cut his hair." Emily's breath caught in her throat. She had no idea why a simple haircut would cause such a reaction. And yet, for the first time since she'd walked into the mansion, she realized there was more to Mrs. Beaumont's coldness than pride. There was fear. Emily's pulse quickened as Mrs. Beaumont's hand clamped tightly around her wrist. The older woman's grip was surprisingly strong, her nails digging into Emily's skin. For a second, Emily thought she might scream for Daniel, but he was sitting right there, frowning, utterly confused by the scene unfolding before him. "Mother," Daniel exclaimed, half rising from his chair. "What are you doing? You're frightening her." But Mrs. Beaumont didn't let go. Her chest heaved, her voice shaking with desperation. "You don't understand, Daniel. You don't understand what happens when the hair is cut. Please, don't let her do this." Emily's mind whirled. She had heard of strange superstitions before, but the raw fear in the woman's eyes was far from superstition, it was something deeper, almost primal. She tried to ease her wrist free, speaking gently. "Mrs. Beaumont, it's just a trim. I promise I won't hurt him." The words seemed to break something inside the older woman. She sank into the chair opposite Daniel, still trembling, her face suddenly weary with years of hidden pain. Her pearls clinked against one another as her hands shook in her lap. Emily could feel the shift in the room, like the air was heavier, the sunlight from the tall windows dimmer somehow. Daniel sighed, his tone sharp. "This is absurd. Emily isn't doing anything wrong." He tried to laugh it off, but the tension in his shoulders betrayed him. He glanced at his mother, clearly embarrassed. "Mother, you've always had these little, dramatic reactions. But it's just hair. Nothing is going to happen." Mrs. Beaumont snapped her head toward him, eyes blazing with a sudden intensity. "That's what I thought once. That's what I told your father the day I trimmed his hair." He laughed, "Just like you're laughing now. And that night he collapsed in my arms." Emily froze. The room went utterly still, even Daniel's attempt at a smile vanishing. Mrs. Beaumont's voice grew quieter, almost a whisper, but every word was drenched with sorrow. They said it was coincidence. The doctors told me it was just his heart giving out. But I knew. I felt it. Something broke that day, Daniel. I cut away more than hair, I cut away his life. Emily's hands began to tremble. She wanted to dismiss it, to tell herself it was grief twisting memory into superstition. But the way Mrs. Beaumont's voice cracked, the way her hands clawed at her pearls as though choking on guilt, it was real to her. Daniel rubbed his forehead, torn between frustration and unease. Mother, that was 20 years ago. You can't blame a haircut for father's death. But Mrs. Beaumont leaned forward suddenly, her fingers curling around Daniel's arm. Her eyes filled with tears. I swore that day I would never let scissors near you, not as long as I lived. I begged the nannies, the barbers, everyone. And now here she is, her gaze flicked to Emily, softening into something almost pleading. I can't lose you too, Daniel. I won't survive it. Emily felt her throat tighten. She had no words. The scissors in her hand suddenly felt dangerous, heavy with meaning. She hesitated, trying to decide whether to believe Daniel's rational dismissal or the raw, broken plea of a mother still haunted by loss. And then, just as the silence became unbearable, Daniel's phone rang. He answered it casually at first, but within seconds, his face drained of color. His hand shook as he held the phone to his ear. What? His voice cracked, louder than Emily had ever heard it. No, that's not possible. He stood abruptly, the chair scraping across the floor. Emily's heart pounded. Mrs. Beaumont gasped, clutching her pearls again. What happened? Emily whispered. Daniel lowered the phone slowly, his lips trembling as though the words themselves were too heavy to speak. My business partner, he was in an accident. They just called from the hospital. He didn't make it. The scissors slipped from Emily's fingers and clattered against the floor. The room seemed to collapse into silence, the kind of silence that presses against the chest and makes it hard to breathe. Daniel's hands shook as he lowered the phone, his knuckles white from the tight grip. Emily, crouching instinctively beside him, could barely process what he'd just said. His business partner, gone. A man Daniel had spoken about countless times, the one who had helped him build his empire from scratch, now gone in the blink of an eye. Mrs. Beaumont let out a cry that was half sob, half wail. She stumbled toward her son, wrapping her arms around him as though he were a little boy again. Do you see? She choked out, her voice breaking. Do you see what happens when you cut? It follows us. It takes what we love most. I begged you not to, Daniel. Emily froze, her heart hammering. The timing, the sheer cruelty of it, was too perfect, too eerie to be dismissed as coincidence. She wanted to deny it, to tell herself that no pair of scissors, no haircut, could have such power. But the tremor in Daniel's hands, the haunted look in his eyes, told her he wasn't so sure anymore either. He sank back into the chair, burying his face in his palms. This doesn't make sense, he whispered. It was just a haircut. Just a haircut. His voice cracked on the last words, as though repeating them might make them true. Emily gently touched his arm, trying to anchor him. Daniel, but Mrs. Beaumont interrupted sharply, her tone fierce despite the tears streaking down her face. You don't understand, girl. It's never just hair in this family. Every time it's been cut in defiance, something terrible has followed. First his father, and now this. She looked at Emily with wild, desperate eyes, as though pleading with her to acknowledge the curse she had long carried alone. Emily shivered. She thought of the stories her grandmother used to tell about old superstitions, about hair being tied to a person's soul. She had always dismissed them as folklore. But here, in this mansion, with grief and fear thick in the air, she wasn't so sure anymore. Daniel slowly raised his head, his eyes rimmed red, staring at the scissors that now lay abandoned on the floor. The sunlight streaming through the windows caught on the steel blades, making them gleam like something sinister. Maybe Mother's right, he said hoarsely. Maybe it's not just coincidence. Emily's breath caught. The man she knew, the pragmatic, confident Daniel, was shaken to his core, questioning everything. For the first time, he wasn't brushing off his mother's fears as nonsense. He was considering them. Mrs. Beaumont reached for his hand, her grip firm, protective. Promise me, Daniel, promise me you'll never let scissors touch your hair again. Please, I can't lose you. Not like I lost him. Daniel hesitated, looking between his mother and Emily. Finally, with a heavy sigh, he nodded. "I promise." Emily felt a chill run through her veins. She wasn't sure if she believed in curses, but she knew one thing for certain: she would never again raise a pair of scissors to his hair. Not after what had just happened. Not after seeing a mother's grief that deep. From that day forward, Daniel's hair grew longer, and Emily made no attempt to change it. She had come to realize that this wasn't about appearances, or wealth, or even superstition, it was about love. A mother's desperate, protective love born out of unbearable loss, and a son's decision to honor it. And though tragedy had cast its shadow over that morning, it also left behind something unshakable, a bond of understanding that neither Emily nor Daniel would ever forget.